Will you pray with me? Christ, light of the world, illuminate our hearts and our minds. Amen.
Amen.
Do be seated. And thank you again for the wonderful warm welcome I've had from you this morning. I hope everyone survived polar vortex without losing too many digits or noses. The wind was pretty scary in Connecticut, where I was. I hate to think what it was like up here on the coast. Speaking of scary, we have the sort of passage this morning that most rectors would be very happy to have a guest preacher address. It's a lot easier to harangue the congregation than to pick up the pastoral pieces yourself. But no wonder the prophets went from place to place and stayed in out-of-town caves. So I'm going to be looking with you at both the Isaiah and Matthew this morning for two reasons. The first is you've probably heard half a dozen sermons in your life on You Are the Salt and Light, and you've thought a lot about what it means to be salty. The second is that these two passages are really quite closely related. Unlike most scary biblical terrains, they come with a promise as well, and a new way of thinking about ourselves. So both Isaiah and Matthew are concerned about righteousness, and both look up to the light and affirm the light within us as central to our being. Your light shall break forth like the dawn, as Isaiah says, or from Jesus. Let your light shine before others. At this dark time of year, and with darkness around us in society, we've been lamenting the last few weeks. The darkness that trains officers in Memphis to fear and to preemptively attack a person alone in their car. The darkness that surrounds every mass shooting, and especially the families in mourning. We need to remember the strength and the power of light. Shout out, don't hold back. Announce to my people their rebellion, to the house of Jacob their sins. Proclaim with the throat, as the Hebrew says. Blow on the ram's horn. Signal the danger we're in. It's not as if the people in Isaiah's time weren't seeking God. They were. They were genuinely delighted to be walking with God, as if, Isaiah tells us, as if they were a nation that practiced righteousness. We can fully believe that we're seeking God and delight in knowing God, as the Israelites did here, yet be a long way off the mark. How did they find out something was even wrong? God just didn't seem to be answering their prayers, and not only were they hypocritical, they were hubristic enough to put the onus on God. Why do we fast but you do not see? Why do we humble ourselves but you don't even notice? Life was pretty miserable for Israelites under Persian rule. There was drought and unemployment and inflation, which sent poor people to loans to buy seed, into debt, and then into indentured servitude and insolvency. Not too different from some people's cases now. Why are you not blessing and honouring our fast, God? What sort of God are you? They were still fasting, but sometimes we don't have the humility to understand how wrong we've got God. And we keep blindly on in the old ways. The prophet is clear. Your fast is worthless because at the same time you're serving your own interests. You're oppressing your workers and fighting among yourselves. Fasting isn't fasting. It's not a genuine or a holy act if at the same time you're not also looking after widows, the poor, the resident alien. What God wants is action here. And if you look at that passage in Isaiah, you see a whole series of action verbs. Freeing, loosening, releasing, pulling off. All effort verbs to right wrong. Sharing, inviting home, clothing, not hiding. These positive actions to reach out to other people. This alternative fasting starts by releasing others, setting prisoners free, loosening the bonds of wickedness, releasing the oppressed, the wage slaves, the indentured. Fasting means means working to change, to undo the conditions that brought about this wrong in society. So Lent is coming up soon, in 2 or 3 weeks' time. It's our great annual church fast. Perhaps this year, instead of giving up chocolate or alcohol, as well as giving up chocolate or alcohol, we might follow Isaiah's vision of fasting and work to loosen injustice. Might mean saving your coffee money to send to UNICEF or Episcopal Relief and Development, or giving an hour a week to teach English to a refugee. It might mean getting involved in a living wage campaign, or lobbying for criminal justice reform, so that, for example, the pre-trial system doesn't criminalise poverty and use bail as a weapon against poor defendants when it was only ever supposed to make sure that they got back to court. The list of positive verbs in Isaiah shows the sort of actions we're talking about, and they're not so daunting as those ones. Isaiah tells us to break bread with the hungry, house the homeless, and not hide from other people. Hiding from your kin in the passage that this refers to means pretending that they're not there. You can't delude yourself that someone else will take care of the wrong we see around us. We can't isolate ourselves from the needs and problems of our world. And we're definitely all guilty of this. If we can, we live in nicer areas of town. We try not to think about the lives sometimes of those in the more polluted areas, or the areas where schools can't get teachers, where kids can't play in the parks because there's needles all over the floor. In this respect, I'm quite lucky to live in New Haven, where it's very difficult to hide from those run-down neighbourhoods and areas and the food banks. We all live in a really rich country. In a global world, we can't pretend we don't see the famine that's ravaging Somalia and East Africa at the moment. But if we do give and share and help others, then the glory of the Lord will be our rear guard. Your light shall rise in the darkness, and the Lord will guide you continually. These are really powerful promises. Jesus takes up the theme in the Gospel reading today. Let your light shine before others so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. So there are huge theological debates over 2 key points in the Gospel. The first is good works and the role of good works in relation to faith for Christians. And the second is in what sense Jesus fulfills the law, and therefore what our relation to the Jewish law should be. So you might be relieved to hear that we're not going to touch the second one today. I'm going to leave the law, the Reformation, the Anabaptists for Reverend Della to tackle sometime. But on good works, it seems to me that fairly clear Jesus expects good works of us, and that they're integral to our being Christian. My own field of study is Chinese Christianity, Chinese theology, and I know that the Chinese church has really struggled with this question. Some people want to emphasize salvation by faith alone, and they always accuse more liberal believers of diluting the gospel message by emphasizing good works. And this has been one of the questions that split the church, the house churches from the official church over the decades. But here, Matthew's Jesus is pretty clear that our good works bring glory to God. You are the light of the world. Just as salt is salty by its nature, we by nature are light. We don't often think of ourselves. Sometimes I think of Jesus as the light of the world. I don't think of myself as the light of the world. But that's what Jesus is saying to us this morning. And we are light by letting our good works shine. This reality has to be realised by the good works. And in doing so, we're linked to Christ, the light of the world. Isaiah says the people sitting in darkness have seen a great light in that Advent text. Christ's mission is now our mission, to be the light, to let that light shine in the world. Sometimes I think we can have a false modesty, maybe especially as Episcopalians perhaps, not wanting to show off our good works, our charity giving, that don't let your right hand know what your left's doing stuff. But these good works are done for God, not human praise. This isn't about being modest, it's about bearing witness with your life. And when Jesus says, you're the light of the world, He's talking not just to his disciples, but to the whole crowd of listeners. We're in the middle of the Sermon on the Mount. All these people are out there on the hill listening. To let your works shine is to let people see who God is, what God is like. As one scholar wrote, it's simply the light that has penetrated life and been realised there, the truth made tangible. You don't have to perform light, you just have to be. Not hiding your light under a bushel. It's not about drawing attention to yourself and your goodness, but to the light within you. And it's a missionary task. The Christian who does their job in a dark world will be conspicuous. I'm in a rental place at the moment overlooking the Sound in West Haven, and some mornings the light is just so beautiful at sunrise if I'm awake. A light day, the world is glorious in its light, is so different for me from a really dull and grey day, and I really need that light. You're the salt of the earth. Salt flavours, and it purifies, and it preserves things, but salt is necessary. And I know this because I had to be airlifted out of the Grand Canyon once because my sodium levels dropped too low. We're so used to hearing all that medical information about limit your salt intake that sometimes we can forget the heart really needs salt to function. You are salt, and the world needs that saltiness just as it needs your luminosity. Salt was a really expensive product in the ancient world. Salt works with other things. It flavours other parts of the meal. It draws out the flavouring and allows everything else to taste good. Jesus didn't say you're the chili, you're the cayenne of the earth. We're not to overpower, we're not to kill off other flavours. We're to enhance others, to allow the true depths of the person next door, your co-worker, your school friend, to be felt. And a really small sprinkling of salt brings taste to the whole batch. As light, our lives are to witness to God, the God within. As salt, we allow others to be truly and fully themselves. If we think about that first commandment of Jesus, to love God and love your neighbour, then these two metaphors, light and salt, reflect the two aspects of that command. And there's a warning attached. If you don't bear witness with your good deeds in your life, then you're worthless as a disciple. Just like the salt deposits of the Dead Sea, which are impure, could lose their saltiness when the sodium chloride evaporated. Normal salt, pure salt, can't lose its saltiness. Your righteousness has to be greater than that of the religious professionals to enter the kingdom of heaven. But if you do these good deeds, if you break bread with the poor and share with the needy, then, as Isaiah and Jesus chorus together, then your light shall rise like the darkness, and the Lord will answer you. You are the light of the world, so go, shine. Amen.